Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel, wishing you a happy early start. It's like Thursday morning. It's the last real trading day of the week for real markets, but Bitcoin continues to go on, and I suspect that likely things going to be happening today because Thursday is one of the more volatile days, at least from my own backtesting and studies. On top of that, Thursday's actually been the most down day as far as the last 5 to 6 months of Bitcoin history goes, which is just kind of an interesting tidbit there. Last Thursday, however, not that big of a down day. So in this case, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always gonna be down, but if we are gonna see a big down day, typically gonna be happening on Thursday. Anyways, I did want to present a major chart today, something that has not happened like at all since May 2020 was the last time that we saw this before the massive explosion. So ultimately, I want to be getting into that, but before we get into that, I do want to once again highlight Bybit's promotion going on, as I got 0% on maker fees for derivative contract orders if you use the link in the description below, and it'll also award you the Jewel Light for free for the first 30 days if you follow the directions in the description. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. All right, sweet. Let's just jump right into it. Starting off right in over here with the big news of the day, the big fucking news of the day, eh? Sounds Canadian, right? And what is it? Well, it's these two major moving averages right here, the yellow and the green, representing the 21 and the 55 respectively. And as you can see, based upon last night's 5-day closure, they inch ever so closely towards each other, and we are within the midst of a silver cross on the 5-day. Will be fully confirmed on the next closure. In this case, this would be, where the more aggressive people look at it as front runnable, as they are sort of kissing, and we do see that the lower period, the 21, is trading above the higher period, the 55. And anyways, why is this relevant? What have we seen in the past based upon this? Well, it works both to the upside and the downside, but typically sets in a long-term direction. As you can see over here, when it crosses the downside, ever since then, Bitcoin's been getting rejected from the 55, and well, about 50 to 60% move to the downside later. Bitcoin, sorry, actually maybe more like 60 to 70% move to the downside after that. Bitcoin appears to have a major low in, a macro low in. Obviously, it's a major low because Bitcoin's, more than 2x off the lows, or about 2x off the lows. Anyways, the last few times that we saw ones to the upside, however, was in May, early May, actually, in 2020, before this major move to the upside right here. And then, of course, before that, we've seen several, preluding into major moves to the upside, but they're not all major moves to the upside. As you can see, I've highlighted with the green vertical bars all of the times that we've seen the cross happen. I did also highlight the times when there was a downside cross, but I did not measure them out for this particular demonstration because obviously we're in the midst of an upside cross here, so it's more relevant. But I did want to highlight that yes, not every one of them is a major trending move to new all-time highs, for months and months on end. As you can see over here, did have the silver cross in early January, which did produce a nice upside move, pretty damn good right there. But ultimately, that was only, over the course of 30 days, and it did come down after that. And I would even put this particular one as well in 2019 in that same category, where you did see an initial move to the upside, but there was no major continuation, not in the same way that we saw back on over here and back on over here, and the more recent one that we just looked at in May 2020, for example. So I've gone ahead and back tested all of them. There's been 5 prior ones, not counting the current one that we're in the midst of right now. And out of those 5, 3 of those 5 were major trending moves, meaning that not just the first pop was, a nice move, but it went to new all-time highs over the course of the next, like half year to a year, basically. But I'm only measuring for the purposes of this particular demonstration, that first major move, that first pop, if you will. So as we can see, the average return on that first pop after the cross officially happened, was officially confirmed, was about 47%, with a standard deviation of 23%. So that gives us a range of interest from the actual cross happening, where price was of about 24.25% all the way up to 70%. So pretty damn big range right there. But even on the lower end, I would still say pretty fucking impressive. So in this case, if we were to go over to current price action, again, keeping in mind that we have not officially seen the cross happen just yet, but it's very likely that it's going to have a strong possibility to do it and confirm it on the next closure in the next 4 days, the next period, basically. So depending upon where Bitcoin closes at that point, whether it closes like, I don't know, maybe a little bit over here, maybe a little bit below here, that's going to be where the measurement is taken from, obviously. But right now, if I just kind of go over the average of the last few periods here, I would just insinuate that it's going to be somewhere around here, and let's just see what 20% on top of current price action looks like. That would put Bitcoin obviously in the low $30,000 territory. On the upper end, if we saw something really crazy, well, I'll let you read that number for yourself. That would obviously be in the low 40s, but I don't feel super comfortable saying that just yet, simply because, it's well and far away. It's not necessarily my first target. And of course, what's the average days that it's been taken throughout the course of history for this to happen, again, on the first pop? About 53 days, 54 days on average, with a standard deviation of 30. You can see on the quick pop ones, the ones that don't typically get follow through, they happen a lot faster, actually. About 30 days-ish, let's say. But ultimately, again, probably looking somewhere around like a month and a half to 2 months from now, in these numbers of interest over here as well. And again, this goes hand in hand with the Gaussian channel that we've been looking at on the weekly and 5-day, but namely the weekly right here is this one's the most recent one, where Bitcoin did close on the weekly above the mean band of the Gaussian channel, which historically has essentially given Bitcoin a free ride to the top side of the band, both on the weekly and the 5-day here. But just for example's sake, you can see the closure above right here, boom, free ride to the top side. That one basically happen all in the same go. Same thing over here, and so on and so forth. Anyways, the top side of the Gaussian channel right here is going to be about 33,000 bucks basically. So in alignment with those numbers, which provides a little bit of what's the old word that I'm looking for? Motherfucker, I don't know my English words anymore. All right, well, fair enough. You know what I mean. You know what I mean. You don't know what I mean. It's like you can't read my fucking mind. So it's like, you know what I mean. Whatever. Anyways, okay. So we got through that. Next thing up would be to look at the HPDR ranges, just to, see if they've changed at all in the last 24 hours. And no, it's still consistent as it has been for the past, really like the past week now almost, where basically I would not be looking at any sort of breakout or breakdown from the current range, as long as Bitcoin is one, below about 28,700, let's say on a 12-hour closing basis, or two, above about 27,000 bucks, again on a 12-hour closing basis, above or below one of those pivots, and I'd be looking for a trending move in that direction. In the case of the upside, very likely looking at low 30s. In the case of the downside, very likely ultimately looking at low 25s, with a bounce along the way in the low 26s, I'd imagine. But going back to it over here, I did forget to mention one last thing. So with regards to this particular cross, after the cross actually happens, anywhere down to this moving average right here that my cursor is currently on, this cyan one, which is a 9 exponential, is typically fair game. Like we typically do see at least a correction down there before the next sort of busting action move to the upside. For example, you can see, let me just pull up an easy one right here. Yeah, you can see this one right here, crosses, boom, test, boom, up. Over here, let's see if we can find another one. Again, crosses, boom, test, boom, up. This one over here, same thing, crosses, test, up, crosses, test, up, same thing, so on and so forth. It doesn't always have to do that, but at least a correction down somewhere around there, a wick somewhere around there, is typically fair game. So that does open up the possibility, in the more relatively short term, that Bitcoin could very easily come back down somewhere around that area, which is currently hovering at about 26,500. So in the short term, or the relative short term, is there any other colluding factors that do suggest that Bitcoin could see a pullback from here, a decent pullback from here? Actually, yes. Following up on, I think this was maybe Monday or Tuesday's video, we do still see that the daily jewel is showing downside curvature here. To be fair, it hasn't provided like a full-on breakdown just yet. We don't see the DMI supporting in this case just yet. But if it continues like this, it inevitably will turn red. And if that turns red, then yeah, we probably do see that move, at least correcting down somewhere around that 9 exponential. And then on top of that, if we actually go one step further, we can go and reference the stochastic oscillator, which on the daily is still pivoted to the downside. In fact, that was a big portion of yesterday's analysis, looking at the volatility versus stochastic momentum signature. And obviously, while volatility continues to contract, we still see that the stochastic oscillator is pointed to the downside. Therefore, short-term downside actually a little bit more likely right now. So looking at it right here, the current daily pivot is 28,500, meaning that as long as Bitcoin is closing below 28,500 on a daily closing basis, momentum remains to the downside. pullback, in the short term, still a little bit more likely. 12-hour time frame, same thing, going to be showing downside pressure below 28,060. Currently, Bitcoin's trading like right at that number, so not very helpful. Or, I mean, it will be helpful like once we get the closure, but for right now, too close to call it. 6-hour time frame does have a nice trendline regression rejection trend coming in from the last few highs from middle of March, basically, and will be remaining with downside momentum as long as Bitcoin's below 28,300. 4-hour time frame is also going to be showing downside below 28.6, and hourly is going to be flippy floppy, but to the upside right now, as long as Bitcoin's above 28. So in the very, very short term, does Bitcoin kind of flounder around, maybe try another short-term upside move? Possibly, yes. But if there is going to be downside, there's a lot of things kind of stacking up, as you can see. And also it is Thursday, which is, typically the most downside day. And now that I look at the 4-hour time frame, hey, what do you know? There's a bit of bearish divergence, albeit not a super concerning amount right there, but maybe good enough for a short-term downside move to the range lows. And then we get to play the game of range resolution. So you can kind of see the long-term versus the relative short-term here. And yeah, in the short-term, there actually is more pressure to the downside right now. So fair enough. I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this particular video. As always, I want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.